I'm going to talk about the latest frontiers in neuroscience. I'm going to talk about how it's related to you and me, how it can change your life and my life. In fact, how it can help us change society if we interconnect. And what I'm going to talk about is the dynamics of experience. And the talk is shape your mind, shape your brain. It's always been said, change your mind. It's always been said, okay, do something about it, change your attitude. But can you shape your mind? And if you shape your mind, can it shape your brain? So I'm going to share with you some of the basics, some of the most fundamental, state-of-the-art concepts from cognitive neuroscience. Psychology, of course, is something that interests all of us. All of us, when I go to parties, people will talk to me and say, hey, can you read our mind? And then they silently move away. And there's a standing joke also among psychiatrists which says that, when people meet, they say, hi, how are you? Well, I'm fine, how are you? And when two psychiatrists they say, well, you look fine, how am I? So coming back to the neuroscience part of it. Of course, the whole question always has been, what is the mind? Is fascinated philosophers, is fascinated psychologists, is fascinated neuroscientists too of this century. And yes, Descartes, 300 years ago, somehow let the cat amongst the pigeons when he said that mind, body are separate. And he said, well, I think, therefore I am. Cogito, ergo sum. And that has stuck to medical science and much of philosophy ever since. Actually, sort of denigrating, taking away from conventional wisdom that mind-body division can't be done. And it's Advait. There's no duality. It's all a question of non-duality. But then, Sigmund Freud, of course, all of us have heard of, and he gave a dynamic theory of the mind with the unconscious, the conscious, and the ego, and the drives, and the impulses. And then, of course, whatever theory of mind that we take up, the basic concepts are that there has to be judgment, there has to be representation of the external world within myself, I must know the difference between myself and the others, and of course to do with memory, encoding, intelligence, emotions, feelings, action, whatever. And yes, today there is one view of the mind which says it's a functional thing. It's a structural, functional thing, behaviorist view. You respond to something. And what also happens is that, well, the brain is the structure, and the functioning of that is the mind. So it holds it in virtual reality, much like a computer hardware and software. But that's rather simplistic, isn't it? Because the cognitive science aspect of it says it also has to do with logic, internal representation of the world. It has the language. It has an innate grammar to it. How we make sense of the world and how we respond, sometimes reflexively and sometimes in a very thought-out, considered manner. And that's the cognitive aspect. And you put it together, it's like the elephant and the four people trying to actually figure out what animal it is. Everything has contributed to our current understanding. And then, of course, in this aspect of what is the brain? It's high school teaching that it's a structure, master structure, and so on, organ. It's got various lobes. It's got the frontal lobe right in the front, which is well developed in human beings and probably distinguishes us and makes us different from other animals. Besides, of course, in the function of the mind, the appreciation of time and space, to be able to link events and sequences, look beyond what's not in this room, which perhaps other animals are unable to do, to actually abstract and think. Another quality of the mind is, in the human brain, is to think about our own thoughts, metacognition, to be able to do that. And yes, if you look at the brain, we move from philosophical understanding of the brain to structural, psychological, and the current understanding from cognitive neuroscience, because soon we're going to have a peep. And we move from gross brain structures to looking at brain functions. So you had these areas, the broad man's areas as they were called. You had an area for language, you had an area for social cognition, you had an area for motor movement, you had an area for sensation. But now we understand this in terms of centers. That means within the area, small centers which work, and they're networks like nodes working on an internet or on the web. And they immediately exchange more than 100 billion neurons. They exchange information. And what was thought to be the white matter, the glial cells have been found to be now as important in the functioning of our brain. Also, It's a story of gas, solids, soups, and now circuits. Gas being something you can't see, but you know it's there, psychology. Soups, and the solid, the brain. Soup, because sometime back in the last 40 years, there were these theories of neurotransmitters and neurochemistry, which all of us know. Serotonin, dopamine, some of you may have heard. Chemicals in the brain, which conduct impulses. And then, of course, today we're talking in terms of neural circuits. Just like you encode information on a DVD or a CD, the brain encodes information in neural circuits. And that's where it's held. That's why there could be a short working memory, like RAM in a computer, and then you could have written down to a hard disk. So we have moved, our understanding has moved, and much has been done by technology, advancements in functional imaging. We'll see what that means. This is what the brain looks from inside, the brain bow. There is a project on, this is 2013 data, project funded by the National Institute of Health in the US, which is trying to actually map every single fiber, connection, network in the brain. So this is what a brain looks like from inside on functional imaging. This is data from Harvard, data from one of the researchers at the MGH, USA, the Massachusetts General Hospital, the Michigan General Hospital. And this is what the brain, actually your brain and my brain, the fibers connect like this. And they immediately exchange information. And what's said in neuroscience is neurons that fire together, wire together. So when I experience something, and if it happens across my lobes, then they get connected in some way. So when I see somebody and I experience exhilaration or I experience fear, that information is immediately connected with the person's recognition or the face and other information. So that's how the brain codes information. So much about your brain bow. And this is another picture. This is right inside. The first on the left is the cross wires, actually microscopic wires, much like a texture in a cloth. They're woven together and they carry this information. And like it's been famous, this is said by a neuroscientist, you are your connectome. Because that's what you are, the mindset. That's where information is held. Then what's the connection between mind and brain? The mind and brain obviously are connected. And we talk in terms of emotions, thoughts, and action. We emote, we feel, and we respond to those emotions. And to understand this, the blue-colored small pea-sized bodies that you see in the picture on the right, that's the amygdala. So once an information is processed into the brain, you see somebody, let's say if I meet a snake or I meet an animal, a wild animal, and immediately information is rushed to the thalamic area of my brain, which is like a relay center, sorting office. It sends information left, right, in every direction. And if the information goes to the amygdala, my response is fear, anxiety, anger. And that's what happens. You can stimulate the amygdala with an electrode and get the same response. And people who have no amygdala do not fear, even if you put a gun to their head. There have been examples like this, and you say, what's going to happen? I'm going to get killed, but there's no fear. They don't understand the fear. And yes, if the thalamus actually sends those information to the frontal lobe, the front part of the brain where reasoning resides, and this frontal lobe has projections onto the amygdala, it inhibits the amygdala. It stops its functioning. And what you have is much reasoned approach. And therefore, fear may not occur. Even if there is, you may feel angry. It's not reactive anger, but it's considered proactive anger. You can think about it, make your choices, and do what you have to. And that's why, as human beings, and one of the reasons why adolescents feel this anger is because of frontal control has not developed. That takes time. Whereas puberty may finish at 18, it may take till 24, 25 for that to develop. And therein lies the dynamics of experience. The brain, the mind, and the external world. And all this integrates into what we hold as experience. But where does experience exist? How do I remember it? How is it brought back to me? The music which you just heard, the lunch that you just had, the talk that you heard in the morning. How does it come back to you? So obviously it's encoded in short-term memory or long-term memory. And that's where it's held. And every time something which is similar that happens, it fires off neurons, it sends electricity running in the brain, and you get the same experience, which is reborn virtually inside the brain, held in the connectome. Our experience changes our brain, structurally and functionally. Like I said, neurons which fire together wire together. So there is a structural change. There is a functional change that occurs with every experience. And that's why when you go back today evening, the change that you would have had is within the brain. And this change is called neuroplasticity. We were taught that our brain stops growing after the age of 4 or 5. And it doesn't evolve any further, in the sense there's no growth. But now that's been turned on its head. Now we know that actually the neurons, the glial cells, the interconnections continue to grow throughout adult life. And it's been shown by all current research. So we do not remain intellectually dwarfed, but we continue to grow. And things change. And every experience, every positive experience changes it. Then what is mental illness all about? Wherein does it lie? We understand mental illness in terms of a biopsychosocial model. There are genetic predispositions, there are biological changes, there are hormonal changes, and so many things that happen within the body and the brain. And at the same time, environmental factors can stress and trigger it off. Also, within the day in mental illnesses, depression may be caused because of changes in the limbic system, anxiety because of changing in the amygdala, schizophrenia because again changes in the limbic system and elsewhere. You have major psychotic disorders or minor, but all caused because of this change. And how treatments work are by actually restoring what has changed. Whether you take medicines, they restore the neurochemical changes. You take psychotherapy. In fact, that talking psychotherapy is an experience which changes through neuroplastic mechanisms, the networks in the brain. And also, brain stimulation techniques. Brain stimulation techniques, this is from our own lab, using magnetic pulses to stimulate some brain centers. And this patient in the slide on the left, this is before the treatment. And the slide in the center, the top right one, this one here. The red areas are where activation has started after the brain was stimulated using magnetic pulses. And the extreme one doesn't show any change there is no amygdala picture. So it doesn't light up on a functional MRI. And that, the fear and anxiety in the person was totally dissolved with treatment. But then what happens if there is an illness? What about the Babas and the magico-religious treatment? How do they work? And they work by the power of faith and belief. There are only a few conditions like possession syndrome, dissociative identity disorder, which the Babas and the faith healers can cure. Nothing else. And there also we know that there is a change in the right frontal brain portion in a right-handed person. So there is a neurobiology for it. And it's actually a disorder. And most of the disorders land up being treated by Babas because there's a dearth of psychiatrists. Psychiatrists are rare like tigers, just 4,000 in the country. And there is almost 10 crore Indians requiring help. So that's how Babas work. That's how the faith healers work. And if we go further, that means our belief system actually determines where we stand. And that is the domain of cognitive science, which means our language, our culture, our anthropological inheritance, and to do with also psychology and philosophy. And it also takes in the artificial intelligence inputs to understand encoding and information processing in the brain. So that's a new science, the new mantra of today. The future, like IT, is going to be cognitive science. This is to use and introduce a new term for the first time, that we are just but cognitomes. We need to understand our whole cognitive web, our culture, anthropology, linguistic, our social inheritance, to be able to actually understand what we are. And then our genomes can communicate with our the connectomes, which can communicate with the cognitomes. This is what we propose. And in this context, what is positive mental health? I began by saying you can change your mind, and you can, by exerting your mind, you can change your brain. Your mind can change brain and vice versa. The joy and the well-being matter here. All of us say that we feel, since morning we have heard that people do it for pleasure. What drives you is pleasure. We don't want pain. And there is an inflammatory hormone in the body called the cytokines, When you feel stressed, that hormone level rises. And research has shown that there are two types of pleasures. One is called hedonistic pleasure, the other is called eudaimonic pleasure. Hedonistic is what is known as the good life in the fast track. Party, wine, dine, and the fast life. And eudaimonic pleasure is born out of self-acceptance, is born out of being comfortable in your own skin, born out of a positive growth, personal growth, a positive approach to life, a direction in life, a purpose in life, a mastery over environment, and also positive relationships. And it was found that people who were happy could be divided distinctly into two groups. One who had hedonistic lifestyle, they still continued to have high cytokine levels, which are linked with depression, heart disease, cancer, and Alzheimer's disease. And people who had a eudaimonic lifestyle had lower levels of cytokines. That's a state-of-art research. So, mindfulness is what it's all about. The ancient Indian tradition, the ancient Buddhist tradition of mindfulness, which through you can watch your own thoughts, change them, alter them, and in that so, through neuroplasticity, actually change the networking in the brain, actually change the structure of the brain, and actually change the dynamics of your experience. But what does it mean for all of us today here? Science cannot be without a purpose. There has to be an application. Of course, there can be pure science. And what I can see on the horizon, and what all of us neuroscientists, I'm sure you can all see on the horizon, is this: that in the age of epigenetics, which means personalized medicine, where genomes will identify genes for each one of us. I know my genome, my susceptibility, my vulnerability. I can use it with the knowledge of mindfulness, with my connectome, with my cognitome, to live a more meaningful life. It provides an opportunity, a unique opportunity today, which never hitherto before existed. Thank you very much.